Hey everybody, Foley here. Welcome to the weekly news recap for the 22nd to the 28th of September 2025. So this week, there's a couple of different showcases. Tokyo Game Show is currently ongoing, so Sony, Microsoft, and a few other outlets have had some showcases. So first up, we're going to take a look at the state of play from September, which is this week. So this is all on the PlayStation blog, and it's all alphabetical order. It wasn't shown off in this order. First thing up was Battlefield 6, showing off their single-player campaign. Yeah, okay, military thing. Chronoscript: The Endless End is a new game from the people behind The Legend of Wright, which was a kind of a Plucky Squire kind of game. It was like a 2D, as if you were playing on like somebody sketching the ideas for an RPG and you were kind of playing the game that they were in the middle of designing. And then Chronoscript is kind of a similar idea. So it's rendered as if it's like a pen sketches. And the idea is that the story hasn't ended. Like the original author never finished the story and you're working your way through it, and potentially you will come to an end of it. I think the idea with it being an endless whatever means it's probably a roguelike, but I guess we'll see. Maybe not. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but the art style is really interesting. We haven't really seen anything like it before, and it's not clear if there's going to be an element of, as you can see here, there is a little bit of like jumping out of the pages to go to other pages, but whether there'll be like a full-on Plucky Squire situation where you're actually outside of the pages, walking around on the map, or walking around on the desk, who knows. Anyway, it's Chronoscript: The Endless End. It does not have a release date or anything like that, so I'm going to assume at a minimum next year. Code Vein 2 showed off a little bit more combat and now has a release date, so it's the end of January of next year. Crimson Desert similarly also showed off a little bit more gameplay. It's still looking pretty impressive. And still kind of looking a little Dragon's Dogma to some extent, but middle of March next year. Deus Ex Remastered was kind of a out of nowhere kind of game, so Aspyr have been working on this, it seems, and not on Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Anyway, start of February, 5th of February, you'll be able to play the original Deus Ex, but remastered with improved lighting, shadows, character models, and presumably analog controls, because that's probably one of the bigger issues of going back to the original game now. Going back to the original game, you're going to find that it does control pretty clunky. There's no aim assist whatsoever. Enemies are very difficult to shoot and so on. So there's been some questions on whether or not a Deus Ex really needed a remaster, and I kind of feel it did. Anyway, speaking of more remasters, Dynasty Warriors 3, the Complete Edition remastered, is a similar thing. It's just going to be mid-March, same date as Crimson Desert by the looks of it. Dynasty Warriors 3 is kind of when the Dynasty Warriors games kind of got their formula down. It's kind of just been the same game since then. Striking while the iron's hot, I guess. God of War is getting its own controller. Okay, why you didn't bring that out with Ragnarok or whatever, I don't know. Gran Turismo 7 has now sold 100 million units. Sorry, not Gran Turismo 7. The entire series Gran Turismo has sold 100 million units. And to celebrate, there'll be an update in Gran Turismo 7 that brings a bunch of stuff I'm sure racing enthusiasts might actually like. A little bit more of Halloween. It is effectively Friday the 13th game. It's the same developer, the same guys who made Texas Chainsaw Massacre and so on. They're just bringing the same formula to Halloween. It's an asymmetric thing where you play as Michael, bomb around the map, and the other survivors are trying not to get killed. Anyway, September of next year. Despite it being a game called Halloween, they're bringing it out in September. Okay, fine. Last Epoch, Orobus, is already out on PC. It is a kind of action RPG, not unlike Diablo, not unlike Path of Exile kind of thing. It is going to be making its way over to PlayStation next year at some point, and it will be launching with the Oribus expansion. I don't think it has a specific date when that's happening. It's newly confirmed. Launched alongside its first major expansion. Yeah, it doesn't say when. Let It Die Inferno. It's like you should probably take your game's titles advice here, because I think this is the third attempt to make Let It Die a thing. So if you're not familiar with the original Let It Die, it was a sort of dungeon crawler Dark Souls. It was kind of a roguelike Dark Souls before Night Rain was a thing. Where you would go into this tower and you try to make your way from floor 1 to floor 100, and gradually you'd get better and you'd be able to make like checkpoints at like levels every 10, I think, or something like that. Then there was another Let It Die that was effectively like a MOBA, I think, or like an Overwatch type thing. Which I think also didn't do very well. Anyway, now we have Let It Die Inferno, which is, by the sounds of it, is the first game again, but now it's a pit instead of a tower. And it does look like it has more extraction elements to it than the first game did. So there is a concept of gathering a bunch of loot and then having to get out of the abyss, or out of the inferno, whatever, without dying. And there will be PvP, PvE, whether it's a case of... can you turn it off? Because if you could turn it off, I might be interested in playing the game. But if I have to put up with other people, then no thanks. I don't want my fun dictated on the whims of some asshole. Anyway, I did find like the Let It Die series has a good sense of humor and has interesting characters, but it's always been clunky as fuck. So if it's not super, super duper clunky and it isn't, a live service that has a bunch of bullshit in it kind of thing, maybe there might be something interesting there. We'll find out soon enough though, because it's actually out this year, 3rd of December. All right, Wolverine. So the rumors are true. Insomniac have been working on Marvel's Wolverine, guys who made Marvel's Spider-Man. This is a pretty lengthy video. It's not exactly a trailer. It's more of like, it's kind of a behind the scenes and then also a bit of a trailer. And I kind of wish they had just released it as the trailer footage. But anyway, so kind of interesting stuff here. From the looks of it, it's not going to be an open world thing like Spider-Man. And I'm kind of happy about that. It looks like it's going more for the action-adventure Uncharted vibe. So it'll be like chapter-based or level-based. Because you do see, again, I'm skipping over a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff because I'm trying to just get to what might be gameplay. But you do see that Wolverine is going to a lot of different locations, and that doesn't seem like something you'd be able to do in an open world setting, IMO. What's also interesting is that they're probably getting around the 18s rating by making all of the enemies cyborgs. As you can see, a lot of the enemies have like robotic parts, and if you're not familiar with how the ratings board works, they're okay with violence to robots. Even robots that look human, they're okay with it. Well, they're not okay with it, but it won't push it up into like an 18s or rated thing. Whereas if you were pulling this shit, like putting claws through their heads and dismembering them or whatever, that's 18s immediately, if they were human. But since they're technically not human, I guess, because they have cyborg parts, maybe they're getting away with it. I don't know. I am always reminded of the time, and I'm not sure now if Disney owned Marvel at the time, but there was an argument made that mutant toys, like the X-Men toys, shouldn't have a particular duty applied to them when they're being sold. Like they should be sold at a particular price, and people, I think the law was suggesting that because they're human toys, that they have to have a specific tax thing applied to them or something like that. And the lawyers for Marvel were trying to argue that, no, the X-Men aren't human, they're mutants. So it's like, this is going completely against the ethos of the comics or whatever. It's like, they are human. Anyway, what they showed off was pretty interesting, and there's some cool characters referenced in there. Magneto is, oh, not Magneto. Omega Red is in there. Mystique is in there. There's some Sentinels in there as well. I think maybe there is another trailer. I think there is like a full trailer for this, and they don't have it in their rundown. There is a full trailer because they didn't show anything there of the Sentinel part. Anyway, end of the year or second half of the year, if you like, next year. The game is allegedly going to be out. Continuing, Microsoft bringing their games over to PlayStation, and I feel like this is the one that's kind of like nail in the coffin, that maybe there will be another Xbox. Kind of feel like bringing Microsoft Flight Sim is kind of a Microsoft exiting the games hardware. Anyway, so this will be the end of the year, 8th of December. When was Let It Die Inferno? Is that the same? No, 3rd of December, so it's the week after. And then eventually there'll be a PSVR 2 port at some stage next year, and that's that will be really cool. That will be a really cool game to play in PSVR 2. Neo 3 showing off a little bit more stuff and pointing out that there's now a release date, 6th of February, which is a Resident Evil Requiem-ish time. That's gonna hurt. Monthly games, normally we talk about this later in the show, but Sony brought it up during the State of Play, so we're going to talk about it now. The Last of Us Part 2 has joined the PlayStation Plus games catalog as of 26th of September, which is apparently Last of Us Day, whatever. So you already have access to it, basically. And then October's monthly games, which will be not this Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. Alan Wake 2, Goat Simulator 3, and Cocoon. So there's a game that I haven't already bought. So I haven't bought Alan Wake 2 yet, but I've been meaning to. And every time it comes up on sale, I'm thinking, maybe I should get it, but I have no plans to really play it anytime soon. So I usually wait, and now it's actually like part of the subscription. Coming later in the year, Tekken 3, from the original PlayStation, and Soul Calibur 3 from the PS2, and Tomb Raider Anniversary from the PS2, which was kind of a soft reboot. They effectively redid the first game in the new PS2 engine for Tomb Raider. So it was Tomb Raider Legend, Tomb Raider Anniversary, and then Tomb Raider Underworld, I think, were the 3 games on the PS2. Anniversary is really good. Underworld is okay. And Legend is also pretty good. Then we have these speakers from Sony that can tilt for reasons nobody understands. So the PlayStation Pulse Elevate wireless speakers are specifically for desktops. So it's, again, we don't know if it actually works on the PlayStation or not. They did go out of their way to say it's for desktop. It is Bluetooth. There is a microphone embedded in it, so you could use it for chat. And on our planar magnetic drivers. Don't know what those are. But there's multi-device connectivity, so potentially you could use it on the PlayStation as well as your desktop. Whether you can do both at the same time, I don't know. Saros showed off some more gameplay, or showed actual gameplay. We actually haven't seen gameplay from Saros, and it's kind of what everyone assumed it would be, which is Returnal 2. A lot of the gameplay you'll see is just, hey, that's Returnal. So we'll get into like actual combat. But yeah, it's just, I mean, it's saying like it's just Returnal again. Returnal's a good game. Platinumed it. Don't know if I'll platinum Saros. It depends how big of a pain in the hole it is. There are some differences. Obviously, it's a different character. It's a different planet. There's some different enemies. That shield ability is new and seems like it will be like a core ability that your character has. And it looks like it has some kind of like boomerang ability. Like you can take damage with the shield and that charges the shield up and then you can throw it out at enemies. And depending on how much energy you've built up, it will do X amount of damage, I think is kind of the deal with it. They've also pointed out that there's a little bit more permanent upgrades. So they did have like a second life or a second wind kind of thing. So if you die, you can come back one time. And that was in Returnal, but it required you to find a particular artifact during your run or buy it during your run. It wasn't just something you always had Whereas it sounds like in Saros, it is something you'll always have. So they might be learning about how people approach Returnal, maybe some of the abilities everybody picked, or some of the artifacts everybody went for, kind of thing, and just say, hey, why don't we just make that a core thing that you can unlock? Anyway, we'll see. There'll be more about Saros in March of next year, which again is like the day after Crimson Desert. Sonic Racing Crossworlds is out this week. We'll talk a little bit more about it during the new releases section, but there's a Mega Man pack coming to it. Seven Deadly Sins Origins is like the video game of the anime that I've never heard of, but it's out end of January of next year. Zero Parades is the alleged Disco Elysium follow-up from the original studio that doesn't have anybody there from the original game anymore, but they try not to point that part out. It does look like they're trying to recapture the Disco Elysium lightning. We'll see how it works out for them, I guess. So this is mostly just highlighting that it's also coming to PlayStation. It's not just going to PC. And that was the end of it, because that's a Z. So I thought the state of play was pretty good overall. I would have liked to have seen something from more Japanese developers, considering PlayStation is a Japanese company, but we didn't really get many. Pearl Abyss is Korean. Bandai Namco, okay, that's a Japanese company. Studio Omega or Omega Force, I think is Japanese. Obviously, Gran Turismo is developed by their Japanese developers. Actually, saying about it now, maybe there were a few Japanese. I suppose what I'm saying is I'm Neo again is Team Ninja Namco Bandai. Sonic Sega, yeah. I don't know who develops this game. Does it say? No, it's not mentioned who's the developer. Oh, sorry, Netmarble. I think they're new. And Zaum are Estonian, I think. Anyway, I guess it's just kind of noticeable that Capcom and Square Enix weren't there. I suppose that's where I'm coming from. Konami, also not there. But I guess we don't really know what Konami are working on now that Silent Hill F is out. Anyway, moving on. As I did say, Xbox also had their own showcase, which was less impressive. So Gungrave Gore, Blood Heat, is effectively the first Gungrave Gore game, just redone. Who keeps giving them money to make these games? Because they're not good. And the last one is borderline unfinishable. Like, there are some scenarios where they're just, how do you survive this section? Anyway, I think I played it on the channel. A little bit more from 007 First Light. It's basically just highlighting a new character. It's going to be played by Gemma Chan. I'm not familiar with her. Double Dragon Revives, a little bit more gameplay. Fatal Fury 2, Crimson Butterfly. I don't remember when it was pointed out that they were making a remake. I know it was a recent showcase, but I don't remember which one. Was it a Nintendo Direct where they pointed? I don't remember. Animo is a... is it a Pokemon type? I think it is a Pokemon type game, like a Pal World, but not like... not Pokemon with guns. This is Pokemon with weapons, but not guns kind of thing. I don't know. It does look impressive. But you're not seeing like a massive amount of actual gameplay. It's really just focusing on some of the characters. But it does continue to look really pretty. So it's got that going for it. Sudden Strike 5 is an RTS thing. Trailer coming soon, apparently. Citation needed. Fallout 76, what they were showing off was basically just, hey, here's what all of the players are doing and not what the developer is doing. Okay. Monster Hunter Stories, again, showing off how Nintendo seems to be fine. I know I say Nintendo even though this is an Xbox showcase, but Nintendo were fine showcasing Monster Hunter Stories, even though it's definitely Pokemon. Hitman World of Assassination has a new escalation thing with Bruce Lee, but Bruce Lee is your partner instead, so he's giving you the mission and is like an NPC during the mission, I think. And it's taking place in not Enter the Dragon. I wonder who they have to get sign off from. I assume it's Bruce Lee's estate for something like that. Anyway, Hotel Barcelona, we'll talk a little bit about more of that later because it is a new release. Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD remake, just showing off a little bit more of the game. I don't remember Rhythm Doctor. Everything in this trailer, including the text and cuts, is a piece of unbroken gameplay footage. Nothing from start to end has been edited in an external program. That doesn't mean you didn't edit it within the game. Okay, so it's a rhythm game. Why do I not remember this at all? Okay, I mean, it's a rhythm game, but this is all unbroken gameplay, apparently? I don't know. Microsoft Flight Sim, we pointed out already, it's state of play that it's going to be making its way over to PlayStation, but also they're going to add Japan, the next world update, whenever that is, and a new plane. This, don't know what that is. Look, I assume it's the plane in the trailer. Romancing Saga 2 is already on PlayStation, and I think it's on Switch, so it's making its way over to Xbox and PC. Star Sand Island is what it looks like, which is Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing by way of Hoyoverse, maybe. Although speaking of Hoyoverse, they have their own Animal Crossing on the way. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, Star Sand Island is a sort of Stardew Valley Animal Crossing type thing. What? Yeah, I might be confusing this with a different game. I'm confusing it with a different game. So, how do you think? How much of this is actually gameplay? Yeah, I didn't look at this trailer because I thought it was a different game. So I'm looking at it now. This is my first time looking at it. I'd love to know how much of this is, you know, actual gameplay and how much of it is bullshit. I'm sure all of it is bullshit, to be honest. All right, here's the actual gameplay. Okay. So I'm not a massive fan of guns in what is clearly meant to be medieval fantasy settings. And I know it's like, whatever, they're going to say it's crossbows that fire really fast or something, but that's still bullshit to me. I know, yeah, like magic, you should be okay with it. But, Anyway, it looks like it's what, multiplayer Souls in some ways, with way more flashy attacks. Yeah, I think not knowing what kind of game they're going for. Anyway, second half of next year with an Oblivion Gate for some reason. Yeah, I thought this was Project... There's another game. We have it coming up later in the update section. It's Project something else. Ninja Gaiden 4, release date 21st of October. This trailer was just showing off that it has some difficulty settings. So you don't have to worry that the game is crazy hard. Because all the Ninja Gaiden games are really hard. But they've always had easy mode. Now, I say easy mode. The game's still hard, even in easy mode. But I think it just lets you resurrect on the spot, and you don't quite take as much damage. Enemies die a little bit quicker. And they make fun of you for taking easy mode. I think they put like a big girly pink ribbon on your back and stuff like that, which is mean. Anyway, Mistfall Hunter is, I think, like a Soulsy type thing, but I think it's a little bit more dungeon based rather than. I mean, the Souls games were dungeon based. I'm thinking Elden Ring, which was like more of an open world thing. It looks like it's still very early in development, though. Winterborough, I think we've seen a couple of times now, has a release date, so 12th of November. It's coming to pretty much everything except PlayStation. So, for people who may have forgotten, because I don't think we've looked at it in a while, but Winterborough is... I always say like it's a Stardew Valley. It's not really, because this is more of like a survival game and a survival crafting kind of thing, rather than Stardew Valley being more of a farming thing. The idea is you're a big city mouse who's come back to his home to kind of check in on his parents and what have you, and finds that they're not there, and then his childhood home has gone into disrepair, and you're spending the winter of Winterborough to kind of fix it up, and then like try to find out what happened to your family, I guess. And it does have elements of like survival, of Don't Starve in some ways, but I don't think it's quite as hardcore as Don't Starve. And then Terminal Brigade is getting some kind of Evangelion crossover thing. Age of Mythology, again, is getting some DLC. It's a Heavenly Spear, I think, is like a Chinese crossover, although that's a katana, so maybe it's a Japanese crossover. Anyway. Call of Duty Blops, who cares? Moving on. And I think the big reveal was that Forza is 1, there's a new Forza, and then 2, it'll be out next year, and then 3, it's going to be set in Japan, which obviously Tokyo Game Show is a pretty good time to reveal that. But as you can see, not a lot of any actual gameplay shown. But yeah, it'll be in Japan, if the mountain didn't give it away. And I think it was later on confirmed that Forza Horizon 6 will come to PlayStation, but it won't be day one. There'll be a slight delay. I imagine it will be... hang on, there's a trailer playing. I gotta find it now. God damn it. Which one of you is playing? It's you. Prick. Okay. It's the last one I put, imagine. Anyway, moving on. That wasn't the only showcase. Kojima had his own showcase for Kojima Productions. And it was pointed out in this article, it's been 10 years since he left Konami, which makes me feel extremely old. But okay, 10 years since the kind of bullshit that happened because of Metal Gear Solid 5. Anyway, so Kojima was just showing off a bunch of extra things. So OD Knock is the next, probably their next game. I think that we will see. It's allegedly redefining the marriage between interactivity and storytelling, which suggests it might be more of a film than a game. And I think this one is in partnership with Guillermo del Toro, so it's possible it might have more of a film vibe than like a actual gameplay, but this is allegedly going to be like a PT thing, you know, what Silent Hills effectively was going to be. I don't think so. I think it's going to be its own thing, but it's probably going to have like the, you know, extreme high fidelity thing that PT had, because that's kind of Kojima Productions. It's what they're doing. Physint is essentially Metal Gear Solid, but he can't call it Metal Gear Solid. This is all we know about it. This picture. It's a cool picture, but that's all we know about it. Here comes the feeling is quite the tagline for what's supposed to be like a spy espionage thing. So more than likely a PS6 game, considering how little they had to show off, and that they're almost certainly working on OD at this point. We did get a little bit of the cast: Don Lee, Charlie Fraser, and Minami Hamabe. I don't know who any of those are. We don't know who this is, though. Who the main character, who's going to be not Solid Snake. Some people are saying it's Robert Pattinson. Maybe. I mean, I can see Robert Pattinson there, but you could see other people there too. Anyway, maybe it is. Death Stranding Mosquito is about a character who sucks. That was pretty funny. I don't think that's how they meant it. Anyway, this is an anime. It looked okay. What's going on with the Death Stranding movie? Nothing, basically. It looks like they're still scouting for locations and casting and what have you. Niantic Spatial specifically are going to be doing something with Kojima, and might be a Death Stranding thing. This is specifically Niantic Spatial, and why I say that is because the rest of Niantic was sold to Saudi Arabia, effectively, which included Pokemon Go and a bunch of other stuff, but they didn't take the Geospatial AI company, whatever the fuck that means. So it's them they're working with. And yeah, why not? Kojima's launching a credit card. Okay. I don't know who MUFG Bank are and where they're based or whatever, but I guess if you want a Kojima credit card, making some sake, sure. But I thought this was a good quote, and it's pretty. It's like, yeah, I agree. If I create something and leave it behind after death, my body will be gone, but what I've created will live on forever as a meme. That's my motivation. Oh, if you are familiar with Kojima, you'll know when he says meme, he does not mean stupid internet joke. He means something else. But I think it's funny to have yourself live on as a stupid internet joke. Absolutely. If that's all I managed to contribute to society, I think I'd be happy. Anyway, there were other updates and other games shown off. So this was the one I was thinking of. It's just Project Retrograde, not Project Evil Bane. I don't know why I thought it was the same thing. They're very different. So this looks impressive, and you guys aren't hearing the audio, but there's some speculation that the voices are AI. Now I will say the voice acting is not amazing. I don't think bad voice acting means it's AI. It could just be bad voice acting. It could be placeholder voice acting. It could be a bunch of things. But it could also be generative AI voice acting. So we're kind of hoping that, one, it's not AI voice acting, because that would suck, because this game does look fun, but I would have to not play it. Or it's placeholder and they're waiting to cast people, or they haven't got the audio done, or whatever. Anyway, Project Retrograde is a kind of Evil Within, but John Wick is the main character. So I'm going to skip pretty far ahead because this video is quite long. I'm going to skip into more gameplay. So it's a little bit Last of Us. It's a little bit over the shoulder. Resident Evil, Evil Within. I feel like it's a little bit more like maybe the newer Alan Wake and stuff like that. But then you encounter this guy. And he's set up as an antagonist. So I don't think he's the primary antagonist. And your character can... whatever's going on with Project Retrograde, your character has some kind of parasite in their body that can learn abilities and combat memories, I think is the way it's put. So I imagine at some fight you must fight that guy, Alan Wake, and learn how to do John Wick shit. Because later on you do just start doing that kind of stuff. And he's doing like the exact moves and everything like that. So I think that's kind of the deal. I'm going to get to the actual... There's a brief amount of like gun fu stuff here, which I think is... I mean, if it actually plays like this, that's like pretty cool. Like it's ridiculously over the top and whatever, but and the story, if you listen to it, is also incredibly over the top. But, if it actually plays like that, it will be hilarious. There's a bit... later, we may have skipped it, but there's a bit later where somebody throws an axe and he shoots them and then catches the axe and throws it back at them. So it's got a lot of Resi 4. It's got a fair bit of Evil Within with more of the stealthy segments. Yeah, it's there. He's like, yeah, it's dumb, but I'm all here for it. And then we've got Resident Evil bullshit with the guy with the one arm that's really big and the other arm that's not so big. Anyway. It's Project Retrograde. I don't think it has a release date. No. And Inverse City, as far as I can tell, are a new developer. It's a Chinese developer. Anyway, then we have Possessors. So this is from Heart Machine. These are the people who made Hyperlight Drifter and Hyperlight Breaker and Solar Ash and a bunch of other things. And I think they make, at the very least, visually pleasing games, even if some of them don't play as well, like Hyperlight Breakers. Solar Ash was a bit clunky as well. Hyperlight Drifter is still very, very good. Anyway, so Possessors has a release date. It is the end of the year at some point, and stupid sexy demons. I'm just gonna get to the release date because it's a Metroidvania type. It looks pretty fun. I will more than likely get it day one because Heart Machine are pretty good IMO. So 11th of November for that. Parkour, as does the game might suggest, you are playing a dog who does parkour. This is very much a tongue-in-cheek kind of game, and is just like a huge throwback to like PS2 platformers, which is why I'm absolutely down to play. I don't know about some of the combat stuff they show off later. Like combat with the dog always feels a bit strange. But you do have a kind of a jetpack. You can do, as you can see, parkour. And then you have like a sniper rifle and a bunch of other stuff built into your backpack. You can be stealth dog. You know, it's pretty dumb. It's pretty silly. The animations are kind of, you know, trying to playing into that and what have you. I'm gonna get to the bits where they actually have like fighting. You know, it's like his German Shepherd is just drifting around these guys, which is pretty funny. And then yeet that guy. It's a Wilhelm scream. Like, it's definitely not taking itself... It couldn't possibly take itself seriously. Like, the premise is already very dumb. But it does seem like the main guy has an army of cats, which, again, is on point. Anyway, as Parkour, I don't think it has a release date. There's a demo. Will be available pretty soon. Oh yeah, so I was talking about how Hoyoverse had their own Animal Crossing, so this is it. Petit Planet is from Hoyoverse. They're the Genshin Impact people who do, you know, the Gashapon games. So Petit Planet looks like it's going for a Animal Crossing and also a Super Mario Galaxy in some ways. I think the way it'll work is particular characters or particular like friends or whatever will have their own mini planet, and where you can do things with them, you can interact with them and like help them build their houses and that kind of thing. Whether you'll have your own little place, like I imagine that you will, because it would be a massive missed opportunity, but I do think the idea is they'll all have their own one, or there'll be one like main one and everybody will have their own smaller one or something like that. I'm basically just trying to figure out where the gacha mechanic comes in, because that's what Hoyoverse do. That's where they get all their money. But I'm guessing the car thing is how you travel between them. As you can see, there's different characters on different planets. Like, that's how I think they're going to like market it. Anyway, we don't know too much else about the game right now. There's obviously like friends, and you can do some like multiplayer stuff as well. So I'd imagine the more animal looking characters are probably NPCs and probably, you know, gacha pull stuff, and the more human characters are the player and multiplayer people. Anyway, I think there's a beta test soon. You wanted to sign up for it, but not to be outdone, there's another person also doing Animal Crossing. So Pal World, possibly trying to hedge their bets on whether or not Nintendo, fleeced them during the patent infringement issue. Pal World are just gonna make their own Animal Crossing, but with pals instead. So it looks like it's effectively the same thing. I'm surprised fucking Pokemon hasn't made a Pokemon Animal Crossing, to be honest. I guess Pokemon Mystery Dungeon's about as close as you're going to get. But yeah, it's the pals, and they still have kind of silly things where they're giving Eevee or Lopunny or whoever a fucking chainsaw. And whoever the fuck this guy is, they've got this super creepy guy, and then the rest of the trailer is all bright and fun and whatever, and then just guy doing Russian roulette. Anyway, so Pal Farm... Although I did think this was... I'm still not sure if this was just meant to be a joke about how, you know, the pals are like there to help you, and we're doing Animal Crossing stuff, and they're meant to be like your neighbors, and you're getting along with them. But also, it's Pokemon, and you can just capture them. You know, but also they're currently in a lawsuit with Pokemon for doing that exact thing, so I'm not sure what's happening there. Anyway, last thing we're looking at is Threads of Time. So this was shown off during the PC gaming show for Tokyo Game Show, which is only just finished. And this was kind of the more standout for me. I think we had seen some very small bits of this game before, but we're seeing actual gameplay now, and it is very much going for kind of Chrono Trigger in some ways. So you're jumping different timelines, and it is also still a turn-based RPG or turn-based JRPG, if you like. but it's gorgeous. And this viewpoint is kind of very new, I think, for turn-based JRPGs. Maybe not. It's usually like, side by side, left and right, or right and left, whatever way, rather than having them like looking into the field. For bosses, maybe I've seen it in other games, but usually for the regular fights, you don't have them set up this way. And I think it's just an interesting change of perspective, and it makes the game feel very new and very different, even though it's going to play like a turn-based JRPG. Anyway, again, I don't think they had any mention of, release dates or demos or anything like that. But it is giving strong Final Fantasy Chrono Trigger vibes. Anyway, it's coming out at some point. Over on the Epic Games Store, free up until Thursday, you have Eastern Exorcist, which is a side-scrolling RPG, side-scrolling hack and slash kind of thing. Just going to skip to the actual gameplay. I've heard some pretty good things about Eastern Exorcist. I've been meaning to play it myself, and I just haven't got around to it, and now it's free. So I'll probably give this a shot pretty soon, since I didn't actually have to pay for it, so that's pretty good. And then the other game is Joral's Brother and the Most Important Game of the Galaxy. I have no idea what this is. It's a point-and-click adventure. An 8-year-old boy lives with his eccentric family in the shadow of his brother, who's popular and handsome. It's based on some animation. Joral's Brother. Okay, so it's based on a Brazilian TV show, maybe? Okay. The art's decent. And I do like point and clicks, so we might get that. That is just straight up Final Fantasy there in that section. Okay. Anyway, those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? Well, you can play Silent Hill or Silent Hill F or Silent Hill official launch trailer. I don't know. Anyway. So Silent Hill F from Konami, finally another Silent Hill game that's actually made in-house. Not by Team Silent, but like some of the members of Team Silent, because obviously a lot of them were let go, and Konami tried to get out of making video games and wanted to go all in on pachinkos. Anyway, reviews-wise, it's getting pretty good reviews. From what I've seen, it's been lauded as a return to form. It's a very good Silent Hill. The story is maybe a little bit less fill in the blanks and more of a no, here's the story. Like it's gonna be weird and crazy and scary, but it will make sense. Unlike all of the other Silent Hills where you sort of have to fill in the blanks a little bit yourself. So yeah, we'll be getting around to play that at some point. Hades 2 has left early access. It's version 1.0, and again, from what I've seen from reviews, it's just as good as the first game. Maybe some small little changes here and there that maybe some people don't like, and some people do like. Think it's a good change. Anyway, I don't think this trailer has any gameplay in it, but it is a pretty cool trailer. And Supergiant to have these. Oh no, there is some gameplay in it. So yeah, Hades 1 was really good. Hades 2, I imagine, is also going to be really good. Supergiant games don't really miss. Of the 5 games they've released, all 5 of them have been really, really good. I don't imagine this one will be any different. So yeah, that's another one to put on the list. As we said during the State of Play thing, Sonic Racing Cross Worlds is out, so it is Mario Kart, but Sonic. And again, from what I've seen of the reviews, it's kind of like, in the same way that Mario Kart World has kind of gone off to make itself sort of open world, Sonic Racing is, more of a structured racing, unlike Mario Kart 8, kind of thing. And these kind of cross-worlds things is a kind of interesting little wrinkle in that you can change up the course during the lap, so you're not always necessarily doing the same lap every time. Yeah, I think I've seen some reviews that say it's maybe a bit too chaotic, but I think for the most part people are pretty happy with the additional stuff going on. There's maybe a bit too many crossover characters, because Sonic has plenty of characters. I don't think it really needs that many crossovers. Who the fuck is that guy? Anyway. Anyway, baby steps, 3D co-op, if you like. So yeah, this is from what I've seen from the reviews, the game is just as frustrating as it looks. But it's, as long as you're can understand that you're going to fuck up constantly and not get mad about it, that there's some fun to be had. But if you're gonna be like super salty about not being able to just walk straight forward, maybe this isn't the game for you. Anyway, as I said, reviews are like, as long as you take that into consideration, that much like their other games, failure is very much part of the process. Anyway, and then last game is Hotel Barcelona. Again, this was shown off during the Xbox showcase, but is now fully released. So Hotel Barcelona is a side-scrolling hack and slash thing where you are invited to Hotel Barcelona that has a ton of serial killers or something that are guests there, and you're an FBI agent / serial killer yourself, trying to bring them to justice / take out the competition, whatever way you want to put it. From what I've seen from reviews, it is jank, which is to be expected from Swery and Suda, who are the two developers. It's, it pretty much form for Squarey games to be janky as fuck. I guess if you are okay with games being like super jank and maybe a bit buggy and whatever, but having a lot of style and a lot of like personality, you might be okay with this, but also maybe give it a couple of updates, maybe? I don't know. Unfortunately, though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So, former Probably Monsters workers raise alarm about mismanagement at the studio. So, Probably Monsters have got a bit of a interesting track record. So okay, we'll go into like what are the alleged problems. So, the CEO, Harold Ryan, did an interview with Game Developer, this outlet, last week or the week before. He was talking about the studio and how the studio is on the path to sustainability, and it's showing a new way to develop games, or to develop AAA games that don't require crunch and don't require pleasing the shareholders and all of that stuff. And basically this article coming out from people who used to work there are basically saying, no, that's absolutely not what's happening, which is both unsurprising and extremely disappointing. Anyway, so CEO Harold Ryan recently told Game Developer that the studio's on the path to sustainability, and that Stormlancers, their latest game, was touted as a specific example of a short-term game that could be made. So what's a short-term game? It's a game that they can make very quickly, and that can basically fill the gap between some bigger games, which is how game studios used to do things. Shocker. Anyway, the problem, though, is that Stormlancers development is much less straightforward than it first appeared. So they're alleging that Stormlancers was made within a year. Turns out that's not technically true. So following the interview with Harold Ryan, a bunch of developers and former developers reached out to Game Developer to basically say, this is lies, and here's what's actually happening. So developers familiar with the project told us that the game didn't have a short-term development cycle, and it was primarily made by external development studio Companion Group. So it wasn't even made by Probably Monsters, but on top of that, it used a bunch of assets from a cancelled game that had been 4 years in development. So technically, it kind of sort of took 5 years to make. Anyway, furthermore, these sources allege the game was largely created using assets from another cancelled game that was 4 years in development. That game being Project Vance, and was developed by one of Probably Monsters' subsidiaries, Battle Barge, which was shut down. They're both calling the short-term development claims into question and illuminating what sources describe as mismanagement within Probably Monsters, which is like, if you're going to release the game anyway, why didn't you let Battle Barge do it, only to give it to a third party who you would have had to pay? It's extra, anyway. This information comes from 11 former Probably Monsters employees and others familiar with Battle Barge. So Battle Barge was going to be making a co-op multiplayer third-person shooter called Project Vance. And this was going to be a kind of live servicey type thing. A lot of these sources have requested anonymity for fear of retaliation. We'll get to that in a second. But speaking of fear of retaliation, Probably Monsters is also one of the studios to fire somebody for saying completely protected speech. And they really shouldn't give a shit what anyone is saying on their social media account. And there's a little wrinkle here in that the person they fired is also like part of the marketing team. And they are kind of a spokesperson for the studio. So there's a little bit there, maybe. I'd still argue that it should have been a write-up or a rebuke, strongly worded, whatever. It shouldn't have been like straight to firing. I don't think it was egregious enough for that. Because honestly, they didn't really say anything wrong, IMO. Anyway, one of the many signs of mismanagement and chaos is this alleged short-term Stormlancers thing. The studio was originally founded on the promise of building a better way to make AAA games, and this hiding the fact that Stormlancers is really 5 years in development and also required the shutting down of a subsidiary and farming it out to a third party. Is like, maybe no. I really hope this isn't the new way to make AAA games. So who's Probably Monsters if you're not familiar with them? They are a studio founded in 2016 by former Bungie CEO Harold Ryan. Again, it's Bungie again. It's not like modern Bungie is doing any better. They've already just recently jettisoned their newest CEO for extreme mismanagement, and the company itself is not doing very well. But anyway, former Bungie CEO Harold Ryan founded Probably Monsters in 2016. 2019, they kind of came out of stealth mode, as it was labeled, with a close to 20 million funding round, professed a mission to build a better model for AAA game development. It has a number of game studios under the title of Probably Monsters. So there was Cauldron, Iron, Hidden Grove, Battle Barge, and Firewalk Studios, who made Concord. Anyway, it went on to raise over $400 million in the next 3 years and then sold Firewalk Studios to Sony. So you can't necessarily throw what happened with Concord at Probably Monsters, but it's also likely that they were working on Concord while part of Probably Monsters. Anyway, Sony would then go on to Shudder. Yeah, we already know the deal with Concord. Anyway, it's around about this time that developers say things began to get worse at the studio, beginning with the shutdown of Cauldron. An internal email sent to studio in around 2024. Cauldron had been cancelled by an unnamed publisher, so a publisher pulled the plug. Funding obviously would have dried up with it, even though they had $400 million anyway. After that, a rolling wave of game cancellations from 2023 to 2025, where projects from basically all of the subsidiaries, Iron, Hidden Grove, Battle Barge, not Firewalks, they would have been sold at this point, were paused, and developers were let go. Others were moved to different teams, roughly every 6 to 9 months, which is obviously a great way to maintain knowledge. And new projects were regularly greenlit, even though they were moving their developers around. So this seems smart and definitely well thought out. Environment artist Carol Torres was one of the developers laid off from Battle Barge in 2024. She had joined the studio after Electronic Arts had laid off a bunch of people at Respawn. God, talk about fucking bad luck. She was offered to transfer to Ripple Effect, but decided to turn that down because she had heard that Probably Monsters had a developer-first culture, and she wanted to buy into the story, which, as it turns out, was a bunch of bullshit. Anyway, by the time Probably Monsters shut down, Battle Barge, Torres, and some other employees said all signs of that supportive culture were gone. It had been replaced by a chaotic workplace where Ryan allegedly surveilled employees, blamed workers behind their backs for failures outside their control. This is all very good management shit. And shifted project goals at the drop of a hat. That's always good. Yeah, that's what we like to hear when we're in development. You just radically change your mind. Anyway, so a spokesperson for Probably Monsters kind of got back to games developer when they kind of brought up these allegations. It's like, say, Probably Monsters has always been defined by the dedication, hard work, and creativity of its teams. It doesn't sound like it. Recent years, the gaming industry, yada yada yada, has been difficult, yada yada yada, and this environment means facing tough choices with no easy answers, except the easy answer was to lay them off and not yourself. Doesn't sound very developer first to me. Anyway, there's a bunch of more corporate bullshit here, but it's like, we have a responsibility to keep the company healthy, which means keeping our CEO, who's a massive, massive problem. Staying true to our mission of supporting lasting careers. Developers were let go, moved to different teams. And later on, we're going to find that there was a return to office mandate as well for QA and a bunch of other stuff. Anyway, we're going to skip past the corporate bullshit. So talking about shifting people around and headcount going up and down and how that's, not good for a sustainable studio, as they're alleging at the beginning of this article. Anyway, so as it looked into taking the possibility of some of its live service games that publishers had pulled out of, and they were going to think about turning them into like standalone premium titles, they looked at Project Vance and thought, maybe we can make that happen. So in September of 2024, the CEO again, Ryan, that developers from Hidden Grove and Iron would be joining Battle Barge and will be turning Project Vance into a premium AAA title. They had until November to get a playable build. So you've just added a shit ton of new developers, and you think you have 2 months at best, depending on when exactly in September he said this, to get a playable build of changing the game entirely. And you've just added to a team that was 30 to 40 people, and you now just made them 100. That's gonna go well. So Battle Barge's team size effectively multiplied overnight. Ryan ignored warnings that adding dozens of workers and changing the scope of the project would make development more difficult. How hard can it be? I have to wonder what is Ryan's background. Like, if he's a developer, then this is fucking unforgivable. Communication became arduous as basically they just chopped up the teams and then scattered them about, and just talking about people who had been working together for a long time had suddenly been split off, and people who had been working on one section of the game had suddenly had to be pushed into another section of the game that they weren't familiar with, and yada yada yada. Developers who previously worked closely together were split into different strike teams assigned to different tasks. One group of Hidden Grove alumni was tasked with building a 10-hour campaign mode from scratch, all while trying to learn new tools, processes, and file structures that had been built over 4 years by an entirely different team. As a software developer myself, that's nightmare stuff. And they had 2 months, maybe, to make that happen. Sources differed on whether this was a period of crunch. It was. This is crunch. This absolutely is crunch. Torres, the artist, witnessed some colleagues submitting updates at midnight. So yeah, that's crunch. It's pretty textbook, really. Anyway, you could cut the tension with a knife. Every day, employees feared they would lose their jobs. Ryan fired Chief Product Officer in October, just when there was meant to be a new playable build. That's a good time to do that. Okay. There was no reason given for why he was fired. There's no reason given in this article for why he was fired. I'm not entirely sure why. But anyway, despite all of that, despite having not a lot of time to get that around, they did eventually get a playable build ready in time. 28th of October, that's ahead of deadline. It's not mentioned specifically when in November this was meant to happen. So this is according to some documentation that basically said that the build had passed verification tests. QA was happy enough with it. It might have been buggy. It might have been missing some stuff. You only gave them fucking 2 months. What do you want? But anyway, it didn't make a difference because on the 28th of October, Probably Monsters laid off 50 employees and shuttered Battle Barge. So why the fuck did you have them crunch for 2 months only to not use anything of what they made? Probably Monsters then transferred the Project Vance IP to Companion Group, which we talked about already, and they made Stormlancers a year later. They basically took a game that already had a playable build, had 4 years of development already into it, and turned it around within a year. Now, that's nothing to like sniff at. Getting all of that turned around within a year, having only seen it. Again, they have the same issue of, we've never seen this code before, we didn't build any of it. The file structures probably don't match our pipelines and so on and so forth. So like, that's still impressive. That's still impressive. But the idea of saying it was only a year is not true. Companion Group had it for a year, but that's not the same as saying development only took a year. Anyway, to kind of add insult to injury, the game does not credit the former Battle Barge developers. Instead, it just has a blanket kind of thanks to past and present Probably Monsters developers. Like, there's no listing of the people who worked on it. The credits for the game reflect the contributions of many teams involved in its development. We respect the work of all teams, past and present. My fucking hold you do, because you just threw away all that work they made and laid them off, but okay. And those contributions are acknowledged in the credits? No, they're not. Anyway, game developer then had access to a Zoom call where a bunch of laid off workers had demanded to know why they had not been notified that they were going to be laid off. They were effectively told the day of. And according to the WARN Act, anyway, they are meant to be told if more than 50 people are being laid off, which, as you may recall, laid off nearly 50 employees. The nearly 50 is important because it means it doesn't trigger the WARN Act, which is pretty shitty. Anyway, employers are meant to issue advance notice of layoffs in an office, plant, factory, whatever, is resulting in 50 or more full-time employees losing their jobs. Approximately 54 people had joined the Zoom call. You can imagine legal are probably there, the CEO is probably there, some management people. It's probably not like 54 of the laid-off workers. Anyway, Hators and others said it felt like the company planned the layoffs and project changes to avoid issuing these notices, and that is kind of corroborated when we find out what the lawyer said. When asked if the strategy is legal, game developer reached out to a law person, and they asked them if the strategy was legal. He said he doesn't feel it's consistent with the obligations the law places on employers, which is basically saying they have a loophole. It's not in the spirit of the law, shall we say. Anyway, on the call, General Counsel for Probably Monsters stressed that the number of laid-off employees did not cross the mandated threshold. We've done the math very carefully. Why would you have to do the math very carefully if you weren't deliberately trying not to do this? Deliberately trying to avoid having to do an employee-protected safeguard. Sounds good. Definitely sounds like it's a developer-first studio. And as usual, QA were also thrown under the bus because that's where QA go, I guess. Anyway, so this chaos and confusion at the heart of Probably Monsters came from Brian specifically and his cadre of former Bungie colleagues. There's Bungie again, and close friends who he staffed his C-suite. So yeah, I mean, it's shitheads sitting at the top who won't have to worry about their job, and they're friends of the fucking CEO. So it's like nothing's gonna happen to them. But QA, though, QA is going to get shit on from a mighty height. Anyway, in 2022, he is Brian, the CEO, ordered all QA employees to return to the office full time. This is again 2022. They would have hired people specifically for remote work, people who were on remote teams, some people who just didn't live anywhere close to the studio. He was like, fuck you, get in the office. But on top of that, Ryan was only in the office 1 or 2 days a week. I mean, that's textbook shithead CEO, really. Again, he's not beating the allegations here. When asked about like compensation, because now they have to commute, even though they were told when they were hired on that this would be a remote position and commuting wouldn't be a thing. You guys are already paid at the top of the market. You can afford to commute. Get fucked. My salary is now not the salary you claimed it was. Because I now have to take the commute into consideration, and you are not taking it into consideration. So no, I'm not paid at the top of the market. And anyway, QA aren't paid. QA are paid well enough. Never, I don't care what the top of the market is. Ryan personally monitored when they swiped badges to enter and exit the building. So yeah, now we have mistrust of employees. So that's good. He's hitting all of the cliches so far. The CEO is monitoring when you enter and exit the office. So that's good. So headcount's fluctuating, probably because this guy's a fucking shithead to work for. But when positions opened up for QA, they would be axed and then sometimes allegedly at Ryan's direction. The CEO interfering in the hiring process for a department he should be delegating, really. In fact, if he's the CEO, he should be delegating all of this work. And really, from the way he's treating them people, he shouldn't be CEO in the first place. Anyway, a QA tester, Jessica Gonzalez, the name may be familiar. They were an organizer for ABK. Sorry, a better ABK, which was the Activision Blizzard King QA union. And she was leaving Activision to go work for Probably Monsters, but she recalls being strung along for a job at Probably Monsters after receiving verbal confirmation from Martin, who was head of QA. Martin remembered making the decision to hire her, telling her she'd had it off of there soon, and then nothing happened. And it's alleged that Ryan specifically shut that down. And, you know, it's not fully called out, but it's entirely possible because she was a history of organized labor might have been a problem, considering all of the shit he was doing. Anyway, Martin said there was no reason not to hire her and felt it was really shitty about what happened to her, and he's sorry that it did, but it was out of his hands, I guess. Anyway, on top of that, again, coming from former testers, Ryan frequently said QA was responsible for Concord's development not moving at a faster pace, despite not being involved in that studio, and despite Sony owning fucking Concord at this point. Anyway, QA testers were tasked with examining network code of Hidden Grove. Why do you have QA looking at code? This is not their job. QA tests finished product. QA tests the product of code. They do not test the code itself. This is dumb. This is very dumb. This is getting the driver to inspect the engine. They might know something about how it works, but they're not. Actually, it's not even inspecting the engine. It's getting them to review like the engineer's schematics of the engine. Is probably more accurate. The point is, QA, 1, we're not hired to do that. 2, they don't have the training to do that. And 3, there were other people who should have been doing that. But yeah, again, complete misunderstanding, mismanagement of QA is, unfortunately, very much expected in, well, the tech industry in general, but definitely in games development. It's also alleged that Ryan had moved his desk into a newly formed QA bullpen that many joked was a panopticon. Again, this is just textbook mistrust of your own employees, which is generally a reason for you to not have your position anymore. He insisted it was not a surveillance measure, but would allow him to be the first to check submitted builds. You don't need to be inside QA for that. You could just have them fucking send you the build. Just my own fucking work machine just gets builds sent to it, and this is so dumb. The excuse is like obviously plainly bullshit. He wanted to be there to surveil them. But it did earn him the moniker as the world's most expensive tester, which is fine. It's pretty funny. Anyway, so going back to Martin, who again was head of QA, he explained to game developer that he and Ryan used to work together. They were both fellow test leads on the original Xbox, so this suggests that Ryan's background is QA, and the shit he's doing here suggests he shouldn't have been a QA person anyway. And it does seem like Martin also kind of agreed, because he had no plans to work with Ryan after their first encounter, which is their time working together on Xbox. The only reason he took the job is because he was assured by the person at the time, the QA director, that Ryan had changed his ways. According to Martin, it seemed like it was true until 2023. And this is when they got that injection of $400 million. And it's also the time when publishers were starting to pull out of their games. And this isn't unique to Probably Monsters. This is kind of the time where publishers are kind of fucked around during COVID and taking out loans. and somehow didn't think they'd have to pay back those loans. Imagine, like, the bank wants their money back. Incredible. Anyway, a lot of studios started canceling games in and around now, and Probably Monsters aren't any different, but it did seem like it affected Ryan way too much. He had a bit of an episode, and that episode has lasted 6 years now. Anyway, according to Martin, Ryan was surrounded by close allies who enabled his behavior. This is former Bungie friends, and that they themselves did not behave much better. There's a lot of people working with Harold who are enabling him and doing the same thing, and that same thing is mistrust of employees, surveilling employees, mistreating your employees. It's certainly not a developer first studio. It's a C-suite first studio, which is all of the other studios, really. So their claim that they're doing something different is not holding up. Anyway, Probably Monsters greenlit new projects and hired developers to work on them, only to reverse course, meaning laying them off and cancelling the project. They even spun up one project in July 2024 and then ended it in December of the exact same year. So that's some good forward planning, forward thinking there. Sources have described multiple occasions where developers were interviewed at the company only to have their offer letters rescinded or put on hold at Ryan's direction. They've even talking about one specific one where an employee was allegedly given an offer to take up the job. They did take up the job. They moved to Washington State, which is where the office is, so they could work in the office. Had leased an apartment only for Ryan to rescind the letter like a couple of days before she was going to start. So yeah, developer first. Multiple sources claim that Ryan surveilled employees. He issued regular warnings to people stepping away from their desk. This is remote workers stepping away from their desk, which means he had to have had their webcam on or was monitoring their status on Slack or Teams or whatever. However, Battle Barge leadership had previously stated that employees were free to manage their own time and make up work later in the day if needed, which is what my company does, and I am appreciative of it. When talked about this surveilling, he was alleging that it's rumors and it's not something he does, but he claimed that these rumors had driven developers to make up work filed in Jira, which is a project management tool, which is mistrust of employees because he thinks they're making up work. Anyway, when talking about Ryan himself, sources were saying that he loves to talk shit. He talks shit behind people's backs. He disparaged QA regularly. He even took to disparaging Firewalk Studios, which wasn't owned by them anymore, and talking about Concord and the developers who worked on Concord as game developers who always seek to love what we do. Concord should serve as proof of cautionary tales about building for yourself versus your audience. They refused to listen for years. It's not clear which side he thinks Concord is on, for yourself or for your audience. Because I would be of the opinion that Concord was built for an audience that Sony think they had, or an audience that potentially Firewalk Studios thought they had, as opposed to making a game that's actually for them. Because I feel like that's what I feel. Could be wrong. Anyway. And as usual, fluctuating goals, scope creep, and just straight up breaking your word. Ryan's behavior flew in the face of promises by Probably Monsters to build a positive workplace culture, which is pretty self-evident at this point. Ha Torres, again, the artist from previously, has a copy of their welcome letter from Ryan, where he stated he started the studio in part to make AAA games without the burden of developers experiencing difficult cultures, unpredictable compensation, and unstable employment. Yeah, how's he doing for that? I think he's 0 for 3 right now. I am committing to continuing with the mission of putting people first, namely myself. Anyway, employees were worried other studios would use his model as inspiration, so this is why they reached out. This is like a number of former developers and current developers read the interview with the CEO that Game Developer did 2 weeks ago, and they were compelled to reach out and say, no, this is not how it's working, and we don't want other studios to think this is how it works, because it doesn't work this way. All the developers we spoke with to express doubt over Ryan's promise. All the developers we spoke with expressed doubt over Ryan's promise that the studio is on the path to sustainability. A veteran developer of the studio said that this isn't real. I don't want people to believe it's real because that's just not going to work for everyone. So the idea that you can turn around a game in 1 year, or a game like Stormlancers in 1 year, you can't, basically, unless it's a sequel, because then you'd be able to use a bunch of assets, which is what they did do. You know, it's almost like Stormlancers was a sequel to a game that was cancelled. And studios did used to do that kind of thing. Yeah, the sequel was like we're going to add like 1 or 2 things, but it's going to be mostly the exact same game, and that's how games used to be, and it was fine. Anyway, moving on. All right, EA nearing $50 billion leveraged buyout deal would be partly owned by the Saudi Public Investment Fund. So this Niantic being bought by Saudi Arabia, it seems EA may be bought by Saudi Arabia soon. So this is coming from the Wall Street Journal, that a group of private equity investors, including Silver Lake and the Saudi Public Investment Fund, which is run by Mohammed bin Salman, also known as the Prince Bonesaw, is lining up a 50... In the article, it says a $50 leverage buyout, which would be amazing. Do you really need to do a leverage buyout for $50? Anyway, no, it's meant to be $50 billion leverage buyout. And the goal is to take EA off the public stock market and make it a private company. This is kind of also what Ubisoft are trying to do with Tencent, or rumored that that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get Tencent to basically make a cash injection, buy up all of the shares and take Ubisoft private, and then turn it over to Yves Guillemot, which I really don't see Tencent doing that, but that's allegedly the rumor. Anyway, if you are not familiar with what a leveraged buyout is, it's bullshit and should be illegal, and I have a feeling was illegal until Reagan probably did something. But the idea with a leveraged buyout is you will take out a loan to buy something, and the collateral will be the thing you buy instead. Only the thing you're buying is a company, and the collateral you are using is the assets of that company. I'm gonna buy this company with free money, basically, because if I default on the loan, they just get the company. I lose nothing in this engagement, and this is why leverage buyouts are bullshit. Now, it's alleged that the other side of leverage buyouts is that the bank isn't meant to take like the full collateral of the asset, like there's meant to be some cash, basically, so that so let's say it's a $50 billion right leverage buyout. The loan won't be $50 billion. The loan will be 30 billion, maybe. I don't know. We don't know the exact number. And the rest of it will be cash from a private equity. Now, I find it unlikely that a private equity firm would put up that amount of money themselves as cash, because that's not how they work. They're takers. They're not givers. So I imagine it's diluted through a bunch of all of these investors. And also the Saudi Public Investment Fund effectively has unlimited money. But yeah, like if something happens to EA, or if there's like lots of flops, if Battlefield 6 doesn't do really well, whatever, nothing will happen to Silver Lake. Nothing will happen to the Saudi Public Investment Fund. EA will just have its assets liquidated. And even with that, there's nothing stopping the public investment funds from liquidating the assets early, taking the money, and then having EA declare bankruptcy instead. So they just get a bunch of more free money. Like, I don't understand how this isn't illegal. Anyway, maybe I'm not misunderstanding how it works, but to me, a leverage buyout is you take out a loan, you use that loan to buy the company, and the collateral is the company itself. Which means, like, fucking anybody could buy a company. If you can lie enough to the bank, I guess. Anyway, the deal could be announced as soon as next week, which would be this week if you're watching this video later on YouTube. Unsurprisingly, shares went up significantly. So it's now, they went up 114. They went up 14%. So it's close to like $200 a share, which means they would have been I don't know, 170, something like that. So this buyout would be, if it goes ahead, would be the largest transaction of its kind of all time. So it's not the largest acquisition. The largest acquisition is still Microsoft buying Activision for $69 billion. But it would be the largest leveraged buyout by a substantial margin, I think. Anyway, this acquisition would follow 2 years of mass layoffs and studio closures from EA, which, why bring this up? This is potentially alleging that EA knew this deal was coming up really soon and were looking to make themselves a little bit more attractive to buy. So they don't have lots of overhead. They've laid off a bunch of people. They've divested themselves from a couple of studios and what have you. So the Saudi PIF would be like, oh yeah, we'll buy that then. Maybe. Again, this is all alleged rumors, speculation. 2023, the Public Investment Fund increased its investment in EA to roughly 25 million shares, which would have brought them to about 10% of the studio. So if they're going to buy the whole thing, they're going to have to. We already know they're in partnership with Silver Lake, but it's probably going to be a couple of other smaller private equity investors as well on top of that. Kind of hoping this doesn't happen. As much as I despise EA and think they would actually benefit from going private, to quote The Matrix, not like this. Anyway, developers have criticized the PIF's increasing investment in the video game industry. This isn't the only, as I mentioned already, they bought Niantic to Pokemon Go. They've been in talks with Ubisoft to increase their investment in that and acquire parts of that and so on. And I think they own Evo now, possibly. So there's a lot of, human rights washing going on with the Saudi public funds. Over its role as a state-backed organization chaired by the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the Bonesaw thing, basically. The Bonesaw thing, and also, there's pretty shit with the human rights stuff. There is a comedy festival going on in Riyadh right now, and it's like a who's who of cancelled comedians who are going over there. But I did think it was pretty funny that one of them was also banned from the festival because he made a joke about slavery in Saudi Arabia, which is pretty hilarious. He's you are cancelled even in Riyadh, which is like impressive. You could put that on your resume. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of bad business decisions, I guess Starbreeze admits it dropped the ball over stealth price increase to DLC bundles. So this is kind of a story that happened very fast. It happened all within this week. So Starbreeze, as we talked about previously, since Payday 3 came out, they've been not doing great. Lost quite a bit of money. Potentially they're losing a lot of money, or not making enough money is probably the better way to put it. So I guess to deal with that cash shortfall, they introduced a subscription model for Payday 2. Payday 2 has been out a very long time at this point. So introducing a subscription model now is a choice. But at the same time, they increased the price of a DLC bundle, which is effectively a bundle that lets you get all the DLC effectively, without warning anybody, without warning any players, without warning Steam, I think, in any way whatsoever. So the company launched a subscription service for Payday 2 on Steam, specifically as part of the franchise's 12th anniversary. The service offers players access to all the game's available DLC for $5 a month, or $20 for 6 months, so on. Which is, I guess, fine. I don't know. It feels like... Well, the thing is, if you wanted to buy all the DLC, it's $100. So I guess you're wondering, how much am I going to play Payday for? If we're taking $5 a month into $100, are you going to pay Payday? Are you going to play Payday 2 for 20 months? Maybe. if you are, buy the DLC. Just buy the fucking DLC, I guess. If you want the DLC, I suppose. It depends what you want out of it. But the point is, even if you wanted to do that, they increased the price of the DLC to $150. Just stealth. No mention that, hey, when we bring in this subscription, we're also jacking up the price of the DLC. Which would now mean that it's $5 into $150, and it is too late for me to do maths, so you can do that yourselves. Derek, you can do maths. 30. It's 30 months. Anyway, are you going to play Payday 2 for 30 months? So yeah, that's pretty shitty, and Starbreeze don't exactly have a great reputation with the community right now because of Payday 3, so this obviously didn't help. We dropped the ball on coordinating internally and communicating with our community properly. The negative reaction makes complete sense. The community has made it clear how the price change and its timing looks from the outside. We agree with the community. We messed up on this one, and we have reverted the price on the bundle effective immediately, but the subscription's still there. And like that much DLC, I guess a subscription does make sense, but it's really more a case of how long are you going to play the game for? And like 30 months is more than 2 years at that point. And like 20 months is almost 2 years. Are you going to be playing the game for that long? And introducing the subscription when the game itself has been out some time. I don't know. I guess introducing it early would be like, yeah, $5 a month for DLC. What DLC? The game's just launched. You know, at what point do you actually implement the subscription service? But I did think this last quote, for some reason, I forgot to highlight. Anyway, they're pointing out that the DLC bundle, this $100 to $150 thing, that's only if you haven't bought any DLC at all. So if you have bought DLC, there's a discount for other DLC, and the more DLC you've already bought, if you then buy that bundle, there's a stacking discount on top of it, so you wouldn't actually have to pay $150 unless you were literally like starting from scratch. But even so, jacking up the price and bringing in that subscription at the same time, like it's quite clear that it was a money grab, and they're trying to pretend it wasn't. But anyway, okay, so kind of feel like I should probably have had this story a bit earlier since it's a bit heavier, but anyway, so Microsoft blocks Israel's access to Azure and Gen AI tech used to surveil millions of Palestinian phone calls, according to a report. So why are we talking about this on a video game channel? Because it affects Xbox, so I'm allowed to talk about this. Okay. So they have apparently ended the Israeli military's access to certain Azure cloud and generative AI technologies. If you're not familiar, Azure is Microsoft's cloud service thing. It's hosting servers in the cloud, as opposed to having to have them brick and mortar somewhere on site. You can have them on the cloud, you access it through the cloud, and you go somewhere else in the world to find where they actually are on a server. And in this case, it was in the Netherlands. Anyway, so it was reported by The Guardian a good while ago that Microsoft was effectively allowing Unit 8200, which is a spy agency for the Israeli military, to allow access to Microsoft's services to surveil Palestinian civilians, not Hamas, not, combatants, civilians, which is, illegal. Anyway, Microsoft allegedly has said that Unit 8200 have violated Microsoft's terms of service, which is a pretty hilarious way to say war crimes, but okay. Brad Smith, who is vice chair and president of Microsoft, informed staff that they had ended partnership for this particular thing. It is important to remember that Microsoft are still working with them. Microsoft has ceased and disabled a set of services to a unit within the Israeli military, Unit 8200. Ministry of Defense, rather, sorry. We do not provide technology to facilitate mass surveillance of civilians. Yes, you do. You quite blatantly do. I'm on a machine that does it. Anyway, we have applied this principle in every country around the world, except the United States, I guess, and we have insisted on it repeatedly for more than 2 decades. Citation needed. Well, insisting on it, maybe, but actually following through on it, debatable. Anyway, there's another email from a senior Microsoft executive who's unnamed, to Israel's Ministry of Defense, basically saying that, hey, all that stuff the Guardian was saying might actually be true, even though he said it wasn't. Yeah. Anyway, while our review is ongoing, we have at this juncture identified evidence that supports elements of the Guardian's reporting. Which elements? They didn't specify. And the Guardian's report was quite sweeping, so it would be interesting to know which elements specifically. Anyway, so the Guardian's report that they are referencing there was a report back in May that followed an investigation that alleged use of Microsoft's Gen AI models to facilitate airstrikes, among other operations, on civilians. Anyway, this is a picture of a protest that was held on Microsoft's campus. So, a protest by Microsoft staff, specifically at the company's headquarters in August. Notably, all the stuff that they were campaigning against, Microsoft alleged wasn't true and fired a lot of these employees. Do you think they're going to hire them back? Would you even go back? I don't know, maybe they pay well. Who knows? Anyway, August this year, the Guardian article found that Microsoft had worked with Unit 8200 specifically to create an indiscriminate new system for gathering data on Palestinians, including a sizable pool of non-combatants. So it's the indiscriminate part, is that they were surveilling civilians, which the military should have no reason for doing, unless, of course, you were doing a genocide. Then you might have a reason to do that. It's alleged that 83% of the tens of thousands of Palestinians reported killed in the conflict were civilians. So it's, it sure seems like they're aiming. 83% sure seems like they're aiming at non-combatants. Watch me get cancelled. Anyway, Microsoft workers have been openly protesting against their employers' involvement with the assault on Gaza since early 2024. Back in May, Microsoft insisted that they had found no evidence that their technology was being used to target or harm Palestinians, following a review carried out by an unnamed third party. Who was the unnamed third party? Was it the US government? Anyway, as it turns out, that may not have been 100% true. Anyway, speaking of that data, where was it being housed? Because the cloud isn't really a thing; it's just a network of servers. So it has to be somewhere physically. So who was storing all that data? 8,000 terabytes of intercepted calls were being held in Azure data centers in the Netherlands. Fuck's sake! As part of the Microsoft Unit 8200 partnership, shortly after that report, that data was moved. Don't know where, but Israel is now allegedly planning to transfer it to Amazon instead. All right, so we got one massive tech firm. Now we have to move on to the next massive tech firm, I guess. So as I said, they don't reveal which elements of the Guardian's reporting is corroborated, and Microsoft do continue to have a wider commercial relationship with the Israeli army. Back in February, the Associated Press did mention that basically all of the big tech firms are doing some kind of military work with, well, in general, with the US government, but also with Israel. So it's Google, Amazon, Palantir, Cisco, and Oracle, who are about to acquire TikTok in the US. So that's good. That's a good thing. I'm glad that a tech firm that is helping Israel carry out a genocide has now acquired a platform that was very much speaking out against it. That's not problematic, I'm sure. UN Special Rapporteur has accused Western tech firms at large of being complicit in an economy of genocide. It does seem like Microsoft might be thinking that's true. Who knows? This could just all be a PR thing. Anyway, moving on to something that should have been a lot lighter, and that was a lot heavier than I had intended. Anyway, Xbox's handheld finally has a price, and it costs more than an Xbox. So this is the ROG Ally from Asus that is being built in partnership with Microsoft. And at the time it was released, they didn't give a price. And the assumption was that because the price is going to be really bad. And also, there was some tariff uncertainty in the US, so I guess they were holding off on that. And now, much like the Nintendo Switch 2, it's fucking expensive. Okay, and it costs more than a brand new Xbox Series X, so that's good. Anyway, so the ROG Ally is basically going to allow you to play or stream Xbox games and then also other PC games, so like Steam, Epic, Itch, maybe. So pricing wise, the lower spec model 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gigabytes of storage, $600, which already puts it higher than an Xbox, or possibly the same price depending on which bundle you get. I think that's the Switch 2 price as well, ish. But probably the more eye-watering one is the higher spec one, which is 24 gigs of RAM, terabyte of space, $1,000. My goodness. Anyway, currently over on Amazon, if you were to buy an Xbox Series X, which is the higher spec model of the Xbox, so not even Xbox Series S, $550 through Amazon. Other outlets have it at $600, but that's only the low spec ROG Ally. Doesn't even come close to the higher spec one. If you want to go for a device that's a little bit more almost on par, I guess, is the Steam Deck. The low spec Steam Deck, which is 256 gigs space and about the same amount of RAM, I think. No, it's like 8 gig of RAM, I think, is the low spec one, is $320, which isn't really a fair comparison because the specs are really low and the Steam Deck is kind of old now as well. A closer comparison is the mid-spec OLED Steam Deck, which is 512 gigabytes of storage, 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is pretty much exactly what the ROG Ally is. The ROG Ally is $600. This one is $550. So it's a little bit cheaper. But the Steam Deck's also like older tech. So is it old enough, like $50? Is that how old it is? Or is it a little bit more? And I suppose a little bit more disgustingly is the terabyte version of the Steam Deck. It is only a 16 gigabytes of RAM, whereas the ROG Ally's version is 24 gigabytes of RAM. Is $650 versus $1,000. You know, is 8 more gigs of RAM worth $350 plus whatever additional extra graphics card and whatever is in the machine? Because remember, the Steam Deck is, you know, old tech. Anyway, it releases the 16th of October. Who's going to buy it for $1,000? Probably more people than you think, because it's fucking sold out already. It's sold out on the Xbox store specifically, so it's not sold out in general. You can still get it in other places, but on the Xbox store in the US specifically, it is sold out. So I guess people aren't too put off by $1,000. Anyway, it remains available through Asus and other retailers, so you know, don't worry if you were looking for one, I guess. And if you are, can you just like fucking throw some money my way, I guess, because you clearly have it. These prices, also important to point out, this is the US price. The EU and UK price is actually a bit less. And in the case of the high spec one, it's significantly less. So the UK price of... I actually haven't seen the EU price, but the UK price is about $100 cheaper for the low spec model. So it's $500, or £500 rather. And the high spec model is £700 versus, sorry, £800 versus $1,000. Like, you gotta assume some of that is tariff. Because I don't think the dollar's not doing great exchange rate wise right now, but I don't think it's doing that bad. Like, that's pretty significant. And again, as I said, I haven't seen the EU price. Anyway, last thing, and we're going to end on not a great story, to be honest. Crypto malware game on Steam stole 32 grand from cancer-stricken streamer. So yeah, games community doing great. Anyway, so this is coming from a game called Block Blasters that was on Steam, and it was... When it was released, there was no malware, crypto shenanigans shit going on, and it wasn't until a later update in August that they added something that was malware and that would drain crypto wallets. So there are meant to be some verification checks in place to prevent the most egregious examples of nefarious content from reaching the platform on Steam, but you know, sometimes it doesn't work, I guess. So this game, Block Blasters, which was just like a 2D platformer thing, eventually was updated to be able to drain crypto wallets that were on the same machine. Unfortunately, this was discovered during a live stream fundraiser for a streamer with stage 4 cancer, which is, I think, end stage. Anyway, so the game was released end of July. No malware, and likely part of the review of Steam was that they didn't find any malware. But a month later, 30th of August, the game was updated with a bunch of files and that allegedly contained the malware. Steam does not do any real verification of updates, specifically. It only really verifies, as we found out in the Not Safe for Work stuff, they only verify DLC specifically that's on the store, or like an initial upload, like version 1 of the game. Anyway, so the game was released free, to tempt people to get it and thought that they'd be hit then by the update. But according to SteamDB, it didn't hit many people, under 7,000 downloads. So at least, in some cases, at least we know that it didn't hit many people. And you're having to wonder, did all 7,000 of those people even play the game? And then did all 7,000 of them keep playing after the update? And then do all 7,000 of them have crypto wallets? And how much money was in their crypto wallet? Unfortunately, though, for Ravo Plevnik, sorry, probably said that name wrong, as a streamer, was running a fundraiser to help raise money to treat their stage 4 sarcoma. Somebody joined their chat, encouraged them to download Block Blasters, knowing that this streamer is a crypto enthusiast, so more than likely they would have a crypto wallet, and more than likely there'd be some money in that crypto wallet. And then on stream, they watched $32,000 be drained from their funds. My life was saved for a whole 24 hours until someone tuned in my stream and got me to download a verified game on Steam. As John Walker points out in this article, the video is pretty upsetting. So it's there in the article in the link if you want to watch it. I'm not going to put it on the stream because it's pretty tough. Anyway. I can't breathe, I can't think, I'm completely lost on what is going to happen next, can't shake the feeling that it is my fault, that I might end up on the street again or not have anything to eat in a few days, and blaming himself because he believed chat or whatever is like, it's not your fault, like it's shithead in chat, his fault. There is like a little bit, I guess, of good news to that story. Is another crypto enthusiast. Well, they posted on X to say that they have sent over the money. I don't think it was confirmed. You can receipt below, so let's just assume it's true, because otherwise this is a very, very bad story. Anyway, Block Blasters was then removed from Steam literally the exact same day as the stream, probably because it was massively flagged by everybody watching that fundraiser. Anyway, I'm gonna leave Silent Hill to play in the background. Anyway, that's your news for the 22nd to the 28th of September 2025. So lots of updates coming out of Tokyo Game Show, Sony's State of Play, Xbox's TGS showcase and stuff like that. Some interesting things from Marvel's Wolverine. I do want to see more of the gameplay before I can say for certain, but it does look like it's going for the action-adventure Uncharted instead of like a Spider-Man clone, like an open world thing, which I think is probably the better approach. Saros gameplay is just confirming that it's Returnal 2, which is fine. Returnal was a good game. It was kind of pointed out to me, and by say pointed out to me, I just pointed it out to myself. Of like the big PS5 exclusives when the game launched, when the console launched, they were both really hard games, like Returnal and the Demon's Souls remake, which is an odd choice. It just kind of only just occurred to me that like they're some of their two biggest exclusives that were exclusive to PS5, that weren't PS5 and PS4. Which is Returnal and the Demon's Souls remake, and they're both pretty hard games, pretty niche kind of games, not appealing to everybody kind of thing, which is an odd choice, and I feel like it's not a choice Sony would have made in the past. Anyway, yeah, lots of stuff coming out of Tokyo Game Show. I definitely didn't get to all of it. There was an Indie Game Fest showcase as well, and the PC Gaming Show that I just kind of finished when I started doing this. So I haven't really quite reviewed all of that. There is Steam Next Fest pretty soon, and I'm hoping, as I keep saying, we'll get back to playing games, so I'm hoping I'll be able to do it then. It's just a lot going on in the personal life. Anyway, Project Retrograde, we do kind of need to see how much of that is bullshit, and I'm hoping not too much of it is bullshit, because it does look fun. But the allegations of AI voices, and there's a little bit actually of Hotel Barcelona. There's some small like TV ads and clips, and like they're kind of blink if you miss, and you'll miss it kind of stuff. But it's alleged that that's also Gen AI, which is pretty disappointing. Stuff coming out of Kojima Productions is a bit Kojima smelling his own farts, which is, I mean, it's kind of what you like about the guy as well, that he's like very much up his own ass. But I don't know, it's still kind of fun, I guess. New releases, quite a few decent new releases this week. Silent Hill, obviously, we have on screen now. Sonic Racing game, Hotel Barcelona, Hades 2. I'm saying all these great games that were coming. I can't remember what the other one was. Well, anyway, something. I could just check, I suppose. What was the other game? Oh yeah, Baby Steps. All right. Anyway, yeah, industry bullshit stuff though. That's still coming out from Probably Monsters, finding out that the studio that was trying to like recognize how badly AAA studios are run, and then trying to make something different, and then something fucking happened in 2023, and the CEO just went a bit nuts. Like it is, as we were reading in that article, it is kind of pointed out that that's when it started going weird. When the first game was cancelled, like the first difficult period in the studio, and the guy falls apart. I don't know. It would be interesting to see how much comes out of that any further. The Microsoft Azure thing, I think, is more of a PR thing rather than Microsoft actually growing a conscience, because why would they suddenly grow a conscience now? So yeah, I think that's more of a case of trying to do at least some kind of PR pushback, and if some people read it as Microsoft have divested entirely from Israel rather than just this one very specific thing, maybe they're banking on that. People not reading too much into it. I mean, I suppose it's more a question of how many people are even aware of it in the first place. How many people are aware of it and even care. I care, but anyway. The ROG Ally pricing is insane, honestly. And I can't believe it's sold out. I honestly can't believe it's sold out. That is crazy. $1,000 for a PC in your hand, I guess. Like, you could get a decent PC for that money. You could get 2 Xboxes. You get an Xbox and a TV for that kind of money. Is the portability really worth an entire Xbox to you? Because that feels like what it is. Anyway, EA possibly being sold off and turned private. As I said, I think they would benefit from being taken private, but not by these people. You're not going to get the people you want, I suppose, to take it private, but I don't know. I think it would benefit from it. I think a lot of the publishers would benefit from being private. Anyway, and I say that because you wouldn't be beholden to the shareholders. That's the real reason. You could actually make the things you want to make, and make money and pay your staff, and then make new thing you want to make. What a crazy concept. Anyway, I'm gonna head off. Have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.